Thank you. Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for being here today for this commemoration, and to everyone who helped make it possible and for allowing me to say a few words. It's so important on this anniversary that we remember and honor those lost and affected by nuclear weapons and their loved ones. And I want to offer my deepest personal condolences and those on behalf of the ANSWER Coalition. I also want to speak, as Sakura and others have said, on the need to struggle for those victims today. The fact that nuclear weapons exist at all is an abomination. If humanity is to survive, we must abolish nuclear weapons, and soon. In addition to the countless lives already lost or harmed from nuclear waste, nuclear testing, nuclear accidents, the existence of nuclear weapons themselves means that we are always minutes away from enough firepower to end human existence, sent on missiles that cannot be called back or deactivated once they are fired. And they are fired by a very small number of people. And let me be clear that it is the United States that is the primary danger here, with the largest and most advanced system of nuclear weapons, including an array of stealth aircraft and the 18 nuclear-armed Trident submarines, which can be deployed undetected to hit anywhere on Earth. Each Trident submarine alone carries 24 sea-launched nuclear missiles, with each missile carrying 8 warheads. So that means of each of those 192 warheads in total on one Trident submarine, of those, every warhead is larger than the ones dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So not only is this enough to destroy hundreds of millions of people with just the initial blast, but studies show that even just 100 Hiroshima-sized detonations today would cause catastrophic nuclear winter, killing hundreds of millions more just from famine. Any strike like this would no doubt be accompanied by or responded to by other nuclear launches. This is just one craft. Not only does this pose an existential danger because of the possibility of these hair-trigger military protocols going off because of an accident or a misreading, of which there have been numerous nuclear war close calls in history, where nuclear weapons were armed and deployed in response to false signals of incoming enemy nukes, or launch orders were given and then not followed. But the US has shown time and again, and even openly expressed to this day, that it is actually willing to start a nuclear war deliberately, just like it was the only country to have ever used nuclear weapons in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which again, as others have said, was a completely unnecessary act of racist terrorism against the people of Japan. The Japanese Empire was already defeated, and the bombing was also a warning shot from the US to liberation movements around the world, showing what the US was capable of doing. Not to mention that it is also documented that the firebombing of Japan, which killed 100,000 people, had left only a few cities untouched, including Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because the US wanted to test their new nuclear technology. Later during the Cold War with the Soviet bloc, Daniel Ellsberg, the well-known high-level Pentagon whistleblower who continues to be outspoken, revealed that the US had plans for a first strike attack that would quote-unquote win the war. The plan was to, without warning, nuke every city in the Soviet Union and China. When Ellsberg learned of this plan, he was horrified, and I'll read a few of his words here. He said he asked, if these plans are carried out, how many people will die in the Soviet Union and China? And the answer was in the form of a chart, which showed that they anticipated that in the first several months of the fallout, there would be 275 million dead within weeks, 325 million in the Soviet Union and China alone in the first few months. I then asked how many altogether elsewhere, and the answer was 600 million. Neutral countries would essentially be wiped out by the fallout without a single warhead of ours landing in their territory. And that's without considering a Soviet response to this, either on us or on Western Europe. 600 million people, 100 holocausts, end quote. This was the US plan during the height of the Cold War. And today, the big picture of US nuclear strategy hasn't changed much at all. A core principle of US military doctrine is what is known as an offset strategy, meaning that the US is always racing to keep an overwhelming military and technological edge over its declared enemies. This includes the ability to win, quote unquote, a nuclear war by destroying enemy nuclear weapons before they can be launched in retaliation. This includes the newly and openly expressed desire and plan to dominate space with the Space Force in order to have the ultimate high ground from which to dominate the planet below. The US can do this because it retains a large economic and military advantage ever since it emerged from World War II as the dominant world empire, which was made possible because the US was the only industrialized country whose mainland did not experience heavy bombing during World War II. For these reasons, it is really the United States that is driving this current nuclear arms race. The Biden administration, from a big picture military perspective, has taken the reins from Trump almost seamlessly, who himself took over from the Obama administration's so-called pivot to Asia. The US empire is reorienting away from being bogged down in conquest in the Middle East towards so-called major power confrontation with China and Russia. This is openly expressed by the Pentagon. The US military is actually preparing with all of its logistics and contingencies and budgeting to go to war with Russia and China. And while the scope of such a conflict may seem unfathomable today, it also seemed unfathomable to people before World War I and World War II, both which broke out because of unpredictable, dynamic, interconnected events that spiraled out of control. The same thing can happen today, and with the path the US is on, it is becoming increasingly likely. The US is constantly pushing the envelope with provocative deployments of aircraft and warships and so-called freedom of navigation maneuvers right off the coast of China, in addition to ramping up war propaganda and economic attacks. Really a by any means necessary approach to carry out regime change in or the breaking up of China with nuclear war as an option, to turn the Asia Pacific into a zone of conflict instead of a zone of cooperation, one that is much more easy to dominate. The US is also currently increasing the development of so-called non-strategic weapons, nuclear weapons, or small-scale nuclear weapons, which could be deployed with lower-level on-the-ground battlefield authorization. So the danger today cannot be overstated. I say all this to say that today is about honoring the lives lost and the people impacted by nuclear weapons. And I think the best way we can honor them is for people today to oppose this renewed US war drive and to get organized and to fight to make sure that what happened to the victims of nuclear weapons in the past doesn't happen to anyone else ever again. Because that type of change will not happen from inside the Pentagon or the White House or Congress. The generals all think they're going to be safe in a bunker somewhere when this happens. This kind of change will only happen because of the organized struggle of people like us. And those of us on this call who are in the United States, we have a special duty and opportunity to end what is happening from inside the belly of the beast, the US war machine. So please get in touch with any of the great organizations here today. Let's fight for peace and justice, which must include an abolition of nuclear weapons once and for all. Thank you.